So, welcome to the Babalu Sports Show, where I talk Wisconsin sports. I have put this podcast off as long as I could, just so I could process and decide, how I feel and what my feelings are going forward with this. And of course, we're talking about this terrible ending to the Milwaukee Bucks season, losing to the Heat, obviously 4 games to 1, in just what was a very uncharacteristic, but also just I don't want to say. Well, there wasn't enough emotion and momentum going on in it. I mean, I'm sure the players afterwards had all kinds of different emotions and things like that, but it just did not seem like the enthusiasm was in it the way we've seen our Bucks play in years past, games past. So, um, so I just kind of want to discuss that a little bit of feelings on it and things like that. And at the the top of my list is what everybody has been talking about the past few days is the Giannis quote where he's the whole idea that because they were eliminated in the first round that the season was just a failure. And I'm going to tell you straight up right off the bat here, I am not a fan of that, pun intended, but I am not a fan of that comment whatsoever. I think it, in my opinion, just kind of for lack of a better word, a ridiculous take on it. I don't see how, as a team, you make the playoffs and that season's a failure. Yes, you didn't make your goal. So I think the better wordage, the better explanation of all that is that we missed our goal. It was a disappointing season. You could say it was we didn't reach our high expectations. There's a lot of different ways you can phrase that. Failure is just not one of them, in my opinion, because you didn't fail. You made the playoffs. Um, you could say you failed to reach expectations, but that's a whole different meaning. Failure in in its own self means you did not accomplish anything, and that is far, far, far from the truth. They had the number one seed, and there are people that are saying, okay, they had the number one seed, so as the number one seed, you have to go past the first round. Yeah, I agree. As the number one seed, you should go past the first round. But if you don't go past the first round, you didn't fail. You just didn't reach the goal that you were shooting for. You didn't play up to expectations. Did you fail? You could not have the record that the Bucks had. You could not make the playoffs, and consider consider it a fail. I don't care how you look at it. You it doesn't make sense to me. Um, there's even teams that make the playoffs with a losing record. Now you could stretch that out and say, well, you lost more than you won, so you failed. Okay, maybe you could say it then, but you still made the playoffs. You have in different sport, I know, but you have in NFL where teams have won their division with a losing record. So is that a win or a fail? Um, did you succeed or fail is a better two words for it. I guess you won your division, so you still won. Um, in my way of, let me throw this out to you. Okay, so the '80s, the Bucks had a great team in the '80s. They had high expectations quite in numerous times, and I'm not going to go through each season and say, well, this is they were supposed to win the championship here. They were 1 seed, 4 seed, whatever. That I don't even really care about. They were a playoff team every season, just about. And I'd have to go back and look. Maybe they were every season, for that matter. But for the purpose of this conversation, they never won the championship. So does that mean the whole decade of the '80s was a failure? Does that mean Sidney Moncrief was a failure because he didn't win the NBA championship. I mean, I know you can see where I'm going with this. There are a lot of players then that we would say, well, they were expected to be this. They didn't reach that, so they were just a failure. They made the NBA, but big deal. They were a failure because they didn't win a championship. You would say the whole decade of the '80s for the Bucks was a failure. The difference between that and now is people have put higher expectations on the team that we have now than they did on the '80s because people walked into the '80s thinking, well, they're going to have a good season again, but they can't beat Philadelphia. They can't beat Boston. Those two teams, obviously, in the '80s sat in our way all the time. And because people didn't expect us to beat them, we could go to the first round, lose to Philadelphia, and people would walk away and say, hey, it was still a good season. This year, much higher expectations. We go in, we take on the Heat, we lose. We obviously look bad doing it. But now we didn't just fail in the season or in the playoffs. Our season was a failure. Okay. I don't agree with that at all, obviously. I think that's just one-sided way to look at something, at the season, at the team. You know, I can't sit here, and again, this is going to be my own feelings, but I can't sit here and say, I'm a fan of this team, I'm backing this team, and then turn around and say, but this team's a failure. This team's trash. I don't think that's any way to look at things. I don't think that's um, a healthy way to back your team. I think that just means you're here for the team only if they win. If they don't win, then I'm not here for you. I'm going to give up on this team. I'm done with this team. All these other things that you hear out there, but you will never hear me sit here and say, "Oh, that's a failure." Okay, maybe I'll say that's a bad move. Maybe I'll say, you know, we didn't reach the plateau that we should, or not plateau. We didn't reach the height that we should have. Um, but I enjoyed the season. I thought it was a great season. I enjoy the game of basketball. So yes, I do want us to win championships. Yes, you know, I've been a fan since the early '70s, so I've seen a lot of really bad teams out there too. But I still, just like the Packers, the Brewers, I still watch just about every game I could. Hell, if we want to talk basketball and baseball are a little different because there's so many games, but I could probably tell you there'd just be on a handful. I could probably count on my two hands how many televised games, national televised games, because I live across state here, that I could have watched that I missed because I'm just a fan. They're supporting whether they're winning or losing. The Packers, I never look how bad they were in the '70s and '80s. And I never missed one televised game of theirs. A little easier because they only play on Sundays, obviously. But that's just the way I look at fandom. Is you support them, you try and stay positive no matter the situation. You could criticize a team. You could say I don't appreciate this player. You could say a lot of different things, but you don't sit and say you're a failure or they're in the NBA. They can't be a failure, obviously, and the team's just failure. You can't say that. I don't believe, and still count yourself as a 100 backing fan. Let's just put it that way. But I know you can. There's all different ideas on what fans are. So I'm just telling you my idea. Um, I don't think negativity brings out negativity as a fan. Now, as a coach, that's a different story. You have to be negative toward your players. You have to, not out in public, but behind the doors, you have to say, you're not doing this the way you should. Even as fans, you can, but um, trash, failure, all those are just not what I would consider, for lack of a better term, constructive criticism. They don't serve a purpose other than just to be negative and to be angry, I suppose. And we all are we're angry. That's why I waited so many days to put this up on, to do this podcast, just because I didn't want to come out here with a negative attitude, so to speak. Now let's look at the team now. Um, there's a lot of calling for Chris Middleton again to be traded. I don't like that idea whatsoever, because I think that just changes the whole dynamic of our team. Unless you're wanting to start over from scratch, which I don't think is something we need with this team. Um, yeah, he's going to count a lot toward the salary, but a lot of your second players do. And consistency, there's a lot of talk about that, but you just watch these other players sometimes. Booker, for instance, he had quite a few, 10, 12, not 10, I don't think. I don't know. I looked at his stats not too long ago, but he had quite a few games where he didn't score more than 15 points. Um, that's why it's called an average. And this year, no, his average would not be good with all the injuries and everything else, which I also will say is probably part of the reason he had trouble staying in front of, I don't want to just say him, but in front of any of his defenders all season. He had trouble staying in front of players and playing his defense. Um, it was obviously very evident in the series, but then again, everybody, um, they all had troubles covering Jimmy Butler, and that was obvious. I mean, he went around Brook how many times? Drew probably did the best, but you saw Drew was not up to the task sometimes strength wise, and he powered through them. And some shots he hit were unbelievable. So, I mean, he went around Giannis a couple times too. That's just the way it is. Why we didn't use Jay Crowder in that game or in this, in the series and stuff, I think it probably had to do with, you know, earlier in this season, toward the end of the season. I mean, I didn't want Crowder when people were talking about it, and then I thought once I got him, I thought, oh yeah, he'll work in just fine. He'll do good. But we didn't see much shooting, or in my estimation, when I watched him on defense, I didn't think he was all that strong on defense either. So I really do not believe that he would have matched up with Butler very well. So I think that's part of the problem why he wasn't in there more. Bobby, I mean, he had a couple games with foul troubles, um, and I think with the technicals and stuff that he had, that there may have been a reason to put him on the bench because he was too emotional and could have been a negative aspect in the game too. So I mean, these are all just off off the tip of my head, um, opinions of my own. Coach Bud. Well, let's finish off on the Middleton thing, and I don't think it's a bright idea at all or a good idea at all to trade Middleton. I think next year, after having this off season to get his legs back to where they're supposed to be, he'll probably be back to the defender he was. And we saw, I mean, I'm not sure, I didn't look at stats after this last game, but going into the game 5, he was our leading scorer in this series. So how you could pinpoint him as the reason we lost the series when he was our top scorer, I don't see how you can. Was his handling of the ball less than stellar? Yes. But then again, I don't think he ever led the team in turnovers for a game. Giannis did, Drew did. Um, Giannis is another one that I like sometimes having him dribble up, bring the ball up, but he should not. The ball, he should be using Euro steps and things like that, but and not trying to dribble through double teams and stuff because that just does not work. Um, so as far as Milton, he's got this player option. If he opts into that, I don't think they should, and I really don't know if I see them trading him away. I'd be surprised, but we'll see as that goes forward. Coach Button, which is where I was going to go just a few moments ago. I honestly don't know what to say about that. I've been a Bud supporter this whole time, but I do believe that there are just a lot of things. Maybe a change of venue is what he would need. There are a lot of things that I, I'm beginning to agree with some of the fans out there that are suspect, like the having Giannis up top, and I don't know how that. A few times a game, yes, but when you go to the 5, 6, 7 minutes at a time where he's bringing the ball up all the time, I don't really like that a whole lot. I like seeing Joe Ingles bring it up sometimes, and Drew, of course, should be handled the majority of the time. Drew or Javon Carter. I don't mind seeing some other people bringing it up, fast break and things like that. Obviously, they're going to, but until Giannis can get a mid-range jumper that's consistent, then him bringing it up would be maybe ideal even because right now when he brings it up, they're going to give him the jump shot unless he's shown he can hit it a couple times in the game, and then that changes everything. But they're going to back off him and just build that wall. If he's got a jump shot or someone gives us a 3-point shot, then yeah, then he'd be a really good weapon out there. But right now, no, and playoffs especially no. Um, so and then our defense, the lack of adjustment. I'm going to have to agree with some people out there. The lack of adjustment on defense was worrisome. The end of overtime in or not overtime, the end of regulation game 5, I could kind of see what he was thinking there, but I would not have done it. I would have had Giannis or Brook under the basket because Pat's a good leaper and he's good under there. But you could see he was he jumped and it was not he didn't have the height to defend that. And that's basically cost us the game. And I forget who was on with him. I think Drew maybe. Oh yeah, it was Drew, and Drew was kind of beat on the play, so it was up to Pat. And the shot was maybe a little lucky, but the fact that is, if there's a bigger body there, that play probably would never have been. There wouldn't have been that alley oop play there. So yeah, that's and the motivation. That's the thing I want to keep coming back to, the lack of motivation. Game 2 was the only game we had where we had enthusiasm and, we had Bobby and Pat and everybody running around pumping up the team. That's the only game out of all 5 that we saw that. And that, I think, is a little bit on coaching. When you see something like that happening, you've got to find a way to motivate the players to get them going. Giannis used to be able to do it. Thanasis is a great cheerleader, and sometimes he could get that going. So I don't understand why in the series that didn't happen. Why we never saw the enthusiasm that I feel we should have had, and why I didn't see people getting more into the game. I get that now they have this year they're enforcing rules where you had to stay on you couldn't be standing up a whole lot and all that. So that kind of takes that away a little bit. I mean, I think Giannis got in trouble on one of the games he was injured, and he was made to sit back down. So I get that, but just on the court, we didn't see the cohesiveness and the excitement that I'm used to seeing. But we'll see what happens in this offseason. Will we have Bud back? I'm leaning toward actually no, although I won't be upset that if he is, but I'm not saying I want him to go. Maybe there's explanations for it. I'm just saying that I can see the possibility of it happening. And then we have Crowder and let's see who else is Goran, Leonard Myers. Those are all free agents that I'm pretty positive we won't see back. Lopez is a free agent. I would guess that they're going to try and sign him. I would expect to see him back. Joe Ingles is one that we may or may not. He's one that I didn't really know enough about to have an opinion when we signed him. I didn't like him to begin with, but once he got into the team, got more used to team cohesiveness, I kind of liked him toward the end. He is a very hot and cold shooter, obviously, and that worries me sometimes. But then he's coming off the bench, so that's something that you can live with. If he isn't having a great game, then he'll not be out on the floor. So Thanasis is a free agent too. My best bet is he'll resign too. So is Wesley Matthews. I forgot about him. Matthews is getting old, but you know what? He showed in the series that he was probably one of the better defenders on Butler, especially in game 2. So, and I just don't think he was used enough in game 5 either. So, but I would like to see him back. I don't know if we will, just based on the age and things like that. And then, there are Thanasis we will. And I think as a 12th man, the energy he usually brings, the cohesiveness in the locker room, I think he'll be back. That's one thing that fans don't understand that is so big is just the locker room presence and the cohesiveness in it. You hear these people say, oh, they're professionals, that shouldn't be a big deal. Well, it is. Whether or not you want to believe it or not, it is. If you're not happy in the locker room, that shows out on the field, court, wherever you're playing. All you have to do if you're an older Wisconsin fan is think back to the 80s when we went to the World Series, the Brewers did. And once they got rid of Gorham Thomas, even players, I'm not going to put names out there. I know who I read who said it, but I'm still not putting names out there. But there were several players that said that once Thomas was gone, even though Rick Manning was a good player and had much more range in the outfield, he was not the locker room presence and the camaraderie in the locker room that Thomas brought. And they all said that that's one of the reasons they think that they didn't succeed as well as they did in '82. And I think that would work just as well here. I think Thanasis, I think Middleton, these people that you have that are Milton obviously brings a lot more than Thanasis does player wise. I mean, stat wise. And Chris Milton is a bigger deal for scoring and stats for our team than Thanasis obviously is. But I think Thanasis is huge on the bench and for just the enthusiasm and just cohesiveness as a team. So that's just my thought. I think um, the only people I see, the people I see leaving are Crowder, probably. Um, Most definitely Crowder. I don't think we'll see Goran, obviously. I don't think we'll see Myers next year. And I'm on the bench with Joe Ingles. Green has a two-way contract. Or, I'm sorry, Lindell has a two-way contract. Um, so I don't know what will happen with him. And then we got Marjan, who maybe he'll see more time next year now, too. So, but disappointing, disappointing end of the season, to say the least. Failure, not in the least. So I know there's people that are going to be very much a lot of reaction or negative, not negative, but a lot of reaction and aren't going to agree with that assessment. They'll say this was just a terrible season and a failure, and I'll say I don't agree with that 100%. But that's fine. It's sports. As fans, we can disagree that way. Um, and then that's just how we'll have to look at it. Feel free to leave your comments. I'll get back to you. I won't. I'll have a friendly discussion with you on it, and we can go on and just look forward to next season. We'll actually look forward to the off season, see what happens here. So that's all I've got for you for today. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and share. Thank you all for listening to me again, and we'll have a happier next podcast. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you. Bye.